Hey, welcome back. It is a very happy pleasure to be back. I will take a more active approach with the talking this time, but we have a lot to go over, and I'm just waiting for the crucial. That's all right. I'll just do it now. That's our logo. Just talking about all things Chrono Trigger. That's the vibe here. We got our setup. Nice. Um, there we go. That's the intended place for the logo to go. All right. We have this. Hey, is that a chat? Did we get our chat working? I've been trying to do that. This would be fantastic. It is working. Okay. I got to adjust the size of the chat, but looks fantastic. Let's just do that now. Why not? The old stream elements. It's amazing what those guys can do. While I do this, I will give you a tour here. This is all of the clips that do not have text. I'm trying to find the balance between, text, all the ideas I have that I put on top of the images, and then when they're just in their pure form, which also I love too. So this is the pure form, and then if we press this button, we are suddenly in the tutorial mode, I suppose, where it just randomly shows all of the game mechanics and stuff. That's cool. All right, now if we move on to the previously, it gives you the whole kind of a backstory. It's images of the backstory to the game, as seen in the movie that I made, The Dusk of Time, which is also on the channel. So actually, I will show you this. This is the title for it. So this is my idea to have it going on the screen every time. This is the intro to this scene. But I also want to put the, and then it goes to this. But I also want to put the, notification that you can watch the whole movie on the channel too. Right now it's a 3-part series. Here's the here is the notification, right? Watch the 3-part series on our channel. Did Luca die after the orphanage fire? Where did Dalton go after Chrono Trigger? And then The Dusk of Time. But I want to have that. Oh, you know what? Maybe I just need to do this. Now we do that. Okay. There we go. And then theoretically this should disappear after the... Oh, that's obviously not in the wrong spot. It obviously is in the wrong spot. But see, then it stays. So anyway, I got to sort that out. But anyway, here's the, provocative images pause screen. We'll call it that. Then we can also go to the headquarters, where we see which party members will be deployed today. Just kind of a fun thing to do. End up looking with, it ends up looking like this. After every combination, we get one of these going on. this one you can see that Marl is the Arbiter, so they still have the Arbiter status is still in effect, which means that the Frozen Flame has not been destroyed. And then, yeah, that's it for now. I got a whole bunch of those. Let's look at one more. So here we have Surge as the Arbiter. Excuse me. And then talking about permadeath, which is not as bad as it sounds, because the nature of this game is to be replayed. It can be easily restarted at any time. This one is actually, I packed a lot of text into this one. I took like an old game magazine and changed some of the text around. That's why you have Ilo, and Frog is actually called Keru, because that's what they were called before. So then here is where the way that the game would be played gets sort of laid out, all in a couple paragraphs, but this is a crucial one. Choice and loss is a major theme of the installment, and it shows in the gameplay. Chrono Break was made to be replayed. A single game could take 10 minutes or it could go forever. What story do you want to tell? So it plays out. Oh, I'll just keep reading. Procedurally generated map is different but familiar every time. RPG randomizer elements, yet it's a learnable and dynamic system. Casual gamers and speedrunners alike will love the complete freedom of choice. So it's kind of like a roguelite in that it there's certain randomized elements, specifically your starting party when you have these guys. You know, in Final Fantasy Tactics, your characters have starting stats. So like all of these guys who are Ayla's friends, their starting stats would be randomized. That's one random element. But for the most part, the first part of the game is a pretty uniform and always the same tutorial chapter in a way. It's more of a starting scenario, but it's the default one that we always get, which would be Princess Nadia's escape from Guardia's castle. So that would be her start. And so back to the randomness. For that part, it's pretty much the same, except for the stats of the characters I just showed you. However, after you get through that major chapter, if you happen to get through that major chapter, because the first major story gate would be let's see if I have any. This is what happens when I need to bail myself out. I can just press the button and go back to the other things. And kind of make a mental note to come back to whatever I was going off about, because it does get complicated. Okay, I found it. We'll get to all that other stuff later, but now that I'm back to this, I can show you the next plan for every stream, which will be to review the new footage. So here we have our new items, and I will do a quiet one first, and then I'll explain it when it goes on the loop. Here we go. This is the new items for this stream. This is an image that Square Enix put on their Twitter the other day. But what if it looked like this? Okay, so those were all the new items for the day. Now I'll just do some commentary on top of these. This was, it's all about the provocative images. And then some saturation and layering. This was more of just a technical sort of experiment that I did to see how it would look if you had them go, you know, it's movie editing stuff. And then this one is from the Chrono Alter project, and I sort of made it into a I feel like it fits perfectly with this part of the prequel that I was telling you about. So here is the first chapter when Luca is imprisoned in Chronopolis, prisoner of fate. And so I had made this previously, and then I came across the video that Lance 7586 made for the Chrono Alter project. And I thought, dude, that looks exactly like a more kind of 8-bit version of this facility. So I thought that was cool. So anyway, here we have her walking around, which I'd imagine would be Chronopolis. And then the end of it is noteworthy. Sorry, I just paused it right on the janky part. But speaking about being kind of old school and 8-bit, watch how Lance 7586 adapted the entering a battle scene for if you have to have kind of a Final Fantasy-esque, you know, Chrono Trigger, you don't normally enter the battle scene. You just pull out your weapon or whatever, but he did do that. He did the Chrono Cross Final Fantasy style of you go into a battle, and look at the animation that he used. It's really cool, I think. See, it's got that 8-bit. Oops, okay. Anyway, it's got that 8-bit. And this one is Magus Start. So this is 3 years after Chrono Trigger. And he is still looking for Shala and Zeal, and he's coming to the conclusion that she's not there. But during this time, he's also getting really, really strong, which is a shout out to Crimson Echoes, which is where this footage was taken from. And it's also explained in the Dusk of Time. This is all sort of backstory, but I'll just continue. Okay, so this would be a side quest. In this kind of game that's based on scenarios, like I mentioned the starting scenario earlier, this is a quest you can pick up where you can live it through Magus's perspective here. It says, still his search continues. After Chrono Trigger, Magus scours the Zelian wasteland for traces of Shala. Level up in this challenging space-time before you begin this unique side quest. I'll get to more about the side quest stuff in a minute. Okay, this one speaks for itself, except for I was also speaking in it. But yeah, you have Octopath Traveler, and then this looks so good, you know, if this is what they decided to do. There's just so much depth to this world that they have with the blurred buildings in the background, and it just looks fantastic. So this would be ideal. Just one man's opinion. Oh, let me turn off the little tag on the top so you can see the cool Luca box up here in the top right. New item. There you go, Luca. Okay, that's neither here nor there. Let's continue. All right, now this one is hinting at the end game where Gasper's kind of like, granted this would be, there's sort of 3 stages of the game. There's 3 story gates, and the gameplay, it's always like a very fun sort of infinite game, and then certain conditions change based on which story gates you've passed through. So this would be if the player chooses to pass through into the 3rd optional kind of play paradigm of the narrative, then you have these Dead Sea analogs, and Gasper is kind of trapped in there in a way. This is all pretty grain of salt. I haven't really fleshed it out totally myself, but it's not even confirmed if it is Gasper or if it's just a remnant of Gasper. But this is where you go to pick up your side quests for late game continued. This is basically the end. Once you get here, you're picking up side quests, or you can just cultivate the map that you've got, keep the monsters at bay, go chat to this guy in the Dead Sea, pick up side quests. So this one is really chronologically, in my explaining of this potential idea for a game, this would be low on the list of early game items. This is in the late game. And then it references the classic new game start, where if you start a new game, you're going to go straight to the courtroom. I guess I should just show, and it's one of my favorite clips too. So I'll show the new game story again, and while I find that, we can watch this. Okay. We've looked at this. All right. This is not a new item. Oops. Okay, so this one explains... Well, I'll just play it. Oh, I gotta turn off the other music too. Okay, so what we just saw would be, this is what happens when you press new game. You go straight to this scene where she's shooting, it's a pan up. I'll just review. It's the classic courtroom. Here you go. Climbing up. But this is during the fall of Guardia. So what you don't know is she's being chased by Dalton's army from Poor. And so then, I'm imagining that this is sort of the title screen, and then right when you press start, you get the shattering sound and this image. Or not this image, but the in-game version of this image. So then, okay, so Marl Start is the scenario, the game scenario, Marl Start. And there's other starts, but I'll get to that in a minute. But the thing that makes this unique is that it's the one you go to when you click New Game. If you start with New Game Plus, then there are many different starting scenarios. But first time picking up the game and pressing the button, this is what you're going to get. So that's why it says Marl Start, Fall of Guardia. She's escaped the castle. And the music is the final song of Chrono Cross because it's like a romantic song, and the themes of Chrono and Marl together kind of pervading this. And we'll get to all that later. But for now, I'll just shut up. Okay, I will not shut up. You see here, this is like she's on the run. They had plans to meet up in Truce Forest, the Guardia Forest or whatever. And then she sees the Porian guys are closing in on Chrono. He's a baller, but it's all about how you want to interpret power levels. But anyway, at any rate, they've got guns and stuff. She's backing up. There's a red time gate there, and red is because it's man-made. She does her best. She's fighting off the guys. She sees in the distance, Chrono goes down, and then 3 guys pop out of nowhere and push her into the time gate. Oh, did you notice that? Let me go back a little bit. Look in the top left corner. Who is it? Oh, let me just play it normally. I'll just be quiet now and then review after. Okay, so I can break that one down. Okay, so we talked about the new game, and then this is where you start. You play through this intro chapter. This would be the first real, battle sequence. You start the game, you go right into a battle sequence. You've got two party members separate, which is cool because it shows right away that you're still playing Chrono Trigger, but now you can go to a different spot on the map. And while you're doing that, the characters that you've left, for instance, it would be your point of view is on Nadia right now. So you're battling the enemies on the screen. Then your point of view switched to Chrono. You're battling enemies on the screen. And so at this day and age, you could take 16-bit, technology and make it so tricked out that you would very easily be able to do this, to have just like little mini pockets. And while you're doing this, I will get much more into the like the different party battling later, but while you're doing this, there's sort of an auto battling thing going on in the other parties. And so it does sort of adopt like a StarCraft-esque real-time strategy element too, when you kind of have to shift your focus between battling parties and give them protocols to run while you're kind of dealing with the other ones. Well, that was a lot more than I wanted to get into there, but that is how it works. And then, so she gets pushed in, and because there's 4 entities, they go to the end of time, and she's like, see you later. And then she doesn't have time to talk to Gasper. She's got to get back. And then when we get back, this is not the place that she left. Not at all. So, and what you have here is a Back to the Future style timeline shift where the 1005 AD that she knew, her time outside of it was enough for it to shift. Basically, she left the timeline, and then the fall of Guardia that was happening right there was perpetuating events which would turn this into the Dalton corrupted keystone, aka Stinktown timeline. And that is fully explained in the thing that I mentioned before. I'm really not just plugging our other videos, but I just wanted to show you part 2 here says, where did Dalton go after Chrono Trigger? And that explains how this entire timeline came to be. Oh, hey, what's up, Mint? Nice to see you. Okay, then we go to, what were we going to go to after this? Oh, I was still breaking down the video. Okay, so she's in the end of time. Now watch this glimpse into the past of something that happened before at the end of time, which is a weird concept, I know, but it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. What's going on here? It's not coming at all. I've broken my VLC. All right, let me adjust this and... Okay, we're back. So we saw this. She goes back, timeline shift. Now she's at the end of time, and she's like, what is there even to do? But then we have the ghostly image of somebody who ran through here before and is battling someone, an unknown assailant. And could it be that as our friend Luca was running right here, she might have dropped something in the basket? The truth is that she did, and oh, I've definitely figured out that's how you freeze VLC. But before I go any further, let me just show you this one. First of all, from our friend Esoteric Songs, but I do want to find the other. I think it might be Anti-Annihilation. Yeah, here we go. So, time gates will appear blue if created by, by natural forces of anti-annihilation, which is something they touched on in Chrono Cross, but anti-annihilation is still wide open. And so all of the gates in Chrono Trigger were blue, except for one. So I'll get to that in a little while. But if they are naturally, if the time, my theory is, if time gates are naturally created by anti-annihilation energy, then they'll be blue. However, if they are man-made, as perhaps only our friend, the most badass Luca, would know how to do, then they may have a reddish tinge. So you can see that this one is red. Let's just do a quick deep dive on this real quick. Oh, I forgot to even let that one play out. Okay, my bad. Oh, it was already playing out. Man-made gates appear red. This is some supporting evidence for my theory. I saw a YouTuber comment who noticed gates in Chrono Trigger. Blue gates tend to appear a short time, that should say a short time, before mass extinction events. You know, it's a plot device that obviously was used to tell the story. However, it is interesting if you think about it. 65 million BC, the Reptide extinction, the falling of Lavos. 12,000 BC, the falling continents disaster. 600 AD, the human mystic war. 1000 AD, see, that one has a big question mark over it because it would disrupt the theory that they always occur before mass extinction events. We don't know what was going to happen in Chrono Trigger before we started playing, but it looked like, you know, we don't have any evidence for any mass extinction event until 1999, the Day of Lavos. And then 2300, human extermination at the hands of machines. So this YouTube commenter just mentioned that, you know, the gates always form before mass extinction events, and then that got me thinking about in Chrono Cross when they talk about anti-annihilation. So maybe it's natural pooling of anti-annihilation energy that causes time gates to appear. More on that later. Luca calls these catastrophes markers in the ribbons of time. That's unconfirmed. That's grain of salt. I just liked the phrase and I felt like I needed to use it somewhere. But why not? She could call it that. But to do the deep dive again, you see, Chrono Trigger has been called a series of climaxes. Time gates form when catastrophic loss of life will occur, providing a lore-viable purpose for an infinity of adventure. And then this goes on to talk about the role of blue gates in a world, in an overworld where time is broken, as might be such in Chrono Break. So it says traditional blue gates in the break are not time gates at all. After Pico and the Vision Serpent broke time, all time gates became mere space gates. So time gates in a very large procedurally generated world would be like teleporters. But they're naturally formed teleporters because of anti-annihilation. So if you were wandering through like a massive overworld and you see a blue gate, you know that if you jump into it, there's going to be something to do on the other side. Use them to teleport across the vast map, but beware, entering a gate will take you into a high crisis region, all thanks to anti-annihilation energy. So there's kind of a gameplay-driven reason to have the time gates around still, and to show how time is truly broken when a time gate actually just takes you to another part of the map. Okay, this one's going on. Game mechanic. Blue gates point the way to solvable story events. Break health. A healthy break means running around and seeing very few gates and not so many monsters leaking into the world. You can see how good, in quotes, you are doing based on the state of the overworld. So that's what I was talking about before. What I was talking about before was after you get to the end game, there's a lot of curation. You know how in Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, it had the turf war? It's one of the only Grand Theft Autos that I've played, which I have not played 5, that keeps the game fresh for infinity after the main story has ended just by having that turf war element. So I'm not suggesting that a marriage of Chrono Trigger and Grand Theft Auto would be a good thing, but what I mean is it's got to have that infinite entertainment value late game content. So maintaining the break and minimizing the flow of monsters is an endless task that would keep everyone happy, playing and playing. And that's the point. If you're unhappy, if you get bored at any time, then you just restart it, and there's so many different variables one playthrough could take based on your story choices. And that really goes to the theme of letting the past go, because there's no way that we're gonna ever make a game as good as Chrono Trigger, right? So that's why this follow-up would be a sort of in a different genre of game, where it's like, I'm not trying to do that better than it was already done. We're just gonna create this alternate version of it that ties up all the loose ends and maximizes the gameplay that we liked from before. Okay, let's finish up this one. I think it might be done. Yeah, just a little fade out on the time gate there. Okay, where was I? I'm getting lost here. Oh. We are here. So the red gate came from, it's locked up again. Tell you what, I'm just going to take an 11-minute break and show you this movie that explains the whole intro chapter. Let's go back to the intro chapter. That's what I really want to talk about. Okay, this is the story that, well, you'll see.
The story opens on a familiar stained glass window in a certain courtroom in Guardia Castle. Suddenly, Marl comes crashing through the stained glass window, firing her crossbow behind her at unseen pursuers. It's 1005 AD on the Keystone timeline, and Dalton's forces are overrunning the castle. This is the fall of Guardia. The poor military is the largest the modern world has ever seen, and the soldiers are armed with guns and elements. Guardia has suffered grave losses, and Marl and Chrono were split up in the fighting. With plans to regroup in truce, Marl is now running for her life. She lands on the floor of the courtroom in a hailstorm of shattered glass while several bodies fall from above, decorated by her arrows. Everywhere she turns are more troops. Today has been an awful day for humanity, and Marl is tired of killing. Rather than attack her pursuers full on, she continues her escape, running and running until she reaches the forest. Her breath comes hard and her lungs burn as she books it through the trees, all the while keeping an eye out. She's expecting Chrono to come this way as well, but there's no sign of him so far. Unfortunately, her time is running out. She sees in the distance another massive troop of soldiers approaching her head-on, while another platoon squeezes in on her from the direction of the castle. And then she sees it. There, a shimmering red time gate behind the rock. As the guards bear down on her full force, she finally sees Chrono appearing from the tree line. She tries to call out, but it's no use. The sound of gunfire overwhelms her cries. Chrono disappears beneath the massive ambush of the troops. Rushing back to help him, she's suddenly engaged from behind by the second group of soldiers. She maneuvers around them, dodging gunfire and dropping icicles to the best of her ability, all the while not noticing she is inching closer and closer to the time gate. The gate reacts with her pendant and opens. Marl's enemies fall as bolt after bolt fly from the red-hued steel of her crossbow. Suddenly, 3 soldiers appear from nowhere and tackle her. Together they go flying through the time gate. This sends them to the end of time, thanks to the party being more than 3 people. Once she's arrived, she quickly dispatches the 3 guards, blasting them with ice so they fly over the railing. She looks over the edge. Will they fall forever? An old man standing next to a basket answers. How would I know? It's Gasper. There's no time to talk. Marl runs to the platform to go back to 1005 AD and help Chrono. With the element of surprise and any luck, she'll be able to freeze all the troops and figure it out from there. Unfortunately, when she arrives in 1005 AD, she's in a very different Guardia. The sky is black and the land is ruined. Lavos spawn and other heavy-hitting monsters are present. If the player manages to make it to the edge of the forest, they will find a massive, impenetrable steel wall and the notification that Guardia Forest has been quarantined because of the abundance of Lavos spawn. The player has no choice but to go back to the end of time. What happened? Marl cries. Gasper tells her the timeline has been changed and her reality may be no more. Marl breaks down. She just saw Chrono possibly being killed by Porian troops, and now she's stranded at the end of time. Gasper takes pity on her. There may be a way, he says gently. He taps the basket in front of him with his foot. Some time ago, your friend came through here in quite a hurry. She left this. Inside the basket is a time egg, built by you-know-who, but left here we don't know when. There's an instruction inside. Find Robo. With no other options, Marl puts her trust in Luca, cracking the time egg. Another red gate appears, and Marl steps through. She arrives on the Dalton corrupted timeline in 700 AD to find a world of Dalton's making, and it's terrible. Guardia is totally under Porian control, and the mystics have been driven nearly to extinction because of Dalton's hatred of the reptite dimension. The Chancellor accuses Marl of being a mystic because of the way she arrived through the time portal, and jails her. While in the jail of Guardia Castle, Marl meets an old man named Toma III, who says he can lead her out of the castle prison. Marl says she's looking for a hidden shrine somewhere in the forest to the south of the bridge. Toma says navigating the endless forest is no easy task. He'll come with her as a guide. They need to cross the Xenon Bridge to enter the endless forest. But there they are attacked by a high-tech air force which should not exist in 700 AD. The air force destroys the bridge, and Toma III goes down, teaching the player about permadeath. Marl presses onto the forest after the bridge battle. What was once known as Fiona's Forest is now the Endless Forest. From his base of operations in 620 AD, Dalton ordered many more trees to be planted here so they could be harvested for weapons of war in the future. 80 years later, in 700 AD, the forest is thick indeed. After navigating a long forest-like maze full of monsters and Porian troops, Marl finally finds her way back to Fiona's shrine in the woods. She enters to find Robo covered in moss and guarded by a cloaked figure with a large sword. At the sound of her first step, the figure takes a mighty leap through the air and lands next to her, but stills his sword due to her resemblance to a regent he served long ago, Queen Lean. Frog briefly relates how he was driven from Guardia, banished for looking like a mystic. Since then, he has been living in Fiona's forest and protecting Robo at the shrine. He says Robo offered Frog the instructions to wait for Marl before shutting down to conserve energy. Frog has been hiding out in the forest and defending the shrine for the last 80 years. This may seem like a long time, but frogs have a really long lifespan. The player won't figure it out for a while, but Dalton intervened on this timeline shortly after Magus summoned and was defeated by Labos. He has perpetuated the narrative of the Mystic War as to make controlling the population in this time period easier. Glenn was turned into a frog shortly before 600 AD, but after Magus' death at the hands of Labos, he never returned to normal form. Thanks to the future actions of Dalton, the Chrono Trigger adventure never happened on this timeline. Robo exists here as an out-of-dimension relic, which was placed here before Dalton ruined everything. Under the watchful eye of Frog, Marl activates Robo, who greets her warmly and sends Luca's regards. He's under instructions to escort Marl to Gaia's navel, a remote island in the southern seas. Due to the magnetic anomaly on which it was built, El Nido is locked out to all forms of air travel, so they'll take the ferry from Dorino to make the journey to Goldove in El Nido. Marl, Frog, and Robo leave the forest, where they are spotted by Porian troops, who seem ever present in this time zone. They battle through many troops who wield powerful elements, which are also droppable items. When they reach the Dorino ferry, a massive amount of troops arrive. Frog tells them to go on. He's defended Robo for this long. He can defend him a bit longer. Robo and Marl run to the ferry while Frog brandishes the Massamoon and heroically attacks the troops. With chivalrous aplomb, Frog beats down the endless bevy of Porian soldiers and successfully buys enough time for Marl and Robo to escape to the ferry. As the boat departs, Dalton's Air Force appears again, raining down heavenly fire on those who dare to oppose his empire. Suddenly, the people of Dorino whip out an unrealistically advanced arsenal of artillery and return fire on the Air Force. The skirmish draws the Air Force's attention away from the ferry, and Marl and Robo sail away undetected. On the ferry, Marl sadly tells Robo what happened to Chrono. Robo says that he knows not what awaits them, but Luca has guided them this far and suspects they are still on the right path. He encourages Marl to have hope. Marl and Robo arrive in Goldove, where they find a vibrant and glistening native culture. However, they are treated as invaders from the mainland and told they need to leave as soon as possible. Marl says they are on their way to Gaia's navel, and the Goldovians explain the only way to get there is via the Hydra marshes on the central continent. There's an opportunity to buy elements in Goldove as well. The player also finds records of fate there. If the player engages with one, they will suddenly be faced by an enemy of overwhelming strength who seemingly appears out of thin air, a thin, pale figure who drops luminaires everywhere. If the player engages this menace, they will game over. If the player runs, they can stay ahead of him long enough to catch a boat to the central continent of El Nido. Once on the central continent, the player makes their way to the Hydra marshes. If they investigate Viper Manor, they may find a huge door with the Zelian crest on the lower levels, but Marl's pendant is out of magic and the door remains sealed. Eventually, Marl and Robo reach the Hydra marshes, calling forth a wingipede using a biba flute, and then tame it with an ancient fruit. Then they can ride the wingipede to Gaia's navel, just like in Chrono Cross. The green dragon is there, asleep. There's also a time gate there. It's the oldest gate, the one Leah used to travel from prehistory and subsequently return to prehistory in Chrono Cross. Robo suggests they should enter it, but Marl is wary of stepping through any more time gates. Besides, even if they wanted to, her pendant is all out of magic, and they can't activate it. Suddenly, the thin, pale figure appears again. If the player has not engaged with any records so far, this will be the first encounter with the pale figure. He's overwhelmingly powerful, and despite their best efforts, Marl and Robo just can't match him. They are facing defeat, when suddenly Isla appears, with a bunch of cave people. This is the first multi-party fight in the game. While the player controls Marl, Robo, and Isla, there are 4 other parties as well, which are all guest characters. Utilizing inter-party double and triple techs, Isla and her tribe attack fiercely. Some of the cavemen have elements they use to fight. Marl, Isla, and Robo can also use any elements that were purchased in Goldove or dropped by Porian troops. They overwhelm the thin white man and he teleports away. Same as Frog, this Isla does not know Marl, but definitely recognizes her own. Marl learns that Isla has been living on Gaia's navel ever since her defeat at Dalton's hands. Under the guidance of her mother, Isla led the people on a long journey to the remote time gate, which Leah has known about ever since Chrono Cross. As ancient caveman lore instructed, the tribe entered the gate 3 by 3 until all of them arrived in this lush, safer version of Gaia's navel. Isla says the recent battle has rekindled her love of the fight. She's tired of waiting on Gaia's navel, and it's time to go. Marl tells Isla and all of her crew that they have some fighting to do, and Isla welcomes Marl and Robo to her tribe.
Okay, so that would be the tutorial chapter. All right. So all of this stuff, I want to mention before I go on that all of this, let me turn up the music again. That's good stuff. Excuse me. All of this Dusk of Time prologue stuff is not something the player needs to know right away. In fact, there's very few answers given about, you don't have to do a lot of digging, but the video that just played about the introductory chapter, that will all be experienced firsthand by the player. So now what I would like to do is go to this again and show how it just go through a lot of the other videos that explain that process. So here again, we're at the where the timeline severed. This is incoming material. All right, this is a really sweet picture from a video game magazine, and it's back in Chrono Trigger's beta testing, and it happened to have these 3 characters. So I thought, wow, that's a great, that really is coincidental for the story that that picture existed from way back then. Okay, next one. All right, so now we're getting into what happens when, at the end of that movie that I just showed, at the end of the tutorial chapter, it's not really the end, it's the end of the of linearity in the game. Now it's all coming to a head. It's all going to be about facing the Vision Serpent. So the first story gate is, so here we go. They're at the end of time. But I want to, here we go. Story gate number 1, the Vision Serpent. Beyond the Singularity. Okay, I'll get to all that later, but once you go into 23, I think I'm getting ahead of myself. Everything you do from the point where we just stopped on Gaia's navel until you get to the procedurally generated, massively random overworld that I told you about. Now we're in between those 2 phases where you have to prepare for this battle against the Vision Serpent. And so you can see that this is the jumping off point into the brand new world. This is where everything you knew about Chrono Trigger gameplay continues to get changed, and the whole storyline shifts to the next level. But before we get there, we've got a lot of explaining to do. Oh no, we already did this. Okay, so all of the following clips are in this middle zone, and I should play them in order. Here we go. End of Time by Elusive Panda. Oh, that reminds me. In the original videos that I did, I included the musicians' credits in the video description, and because those are the older ones and I didn't know it was going to be in this format one day, those musicians were not credited, but they are in the video description of the original video, and I will one day include them in the clips that I show, so that cannot be me dropping the ball. I do have this though. I'm sure they're probably in here. Let's just play this real quick. Thought I had it. Okay, I'll come back to that. I lost my music credits file. Okay, so Elusive Panda with a very cool render of End of Time. Nope. Here we go. We want to go here. Ayla recruits Marl and Robo into her tribe. The party journeys through the ancient gate at Gaia's navel. There are 4 time zones you can go to. You can go to prehistory. I think it's going to show them. All of them are like in the crappy Dalton timeline. So that's what the player's initial impression of the game is that I'm dealing with this. One time someone blasted me in my YouTube comments about having a crappy main villain for this game, and it's because we were only seeing part of the paradigm. It's only the setup intro chapter where you feel like Dalton is the worst thing on earth and that you have to, he's the end all be all. So throughout these 4 time zones that you can go in, he's constantly there, and it's like he is the threat that you can face in different forms. So here are the 4 ones. You can go prehistory, 700, 1020, or 2300. And that has an asterisk because it's not actually 2300. That is, I'll get to that later. It is, but it isn't. And it all goes back to that picture I just showed of the jumping off point, the singularity. Okay, so here's where you have all your choice. You've played through the intro chapter. You defeated the Bound Watchman. All of Ayla and her whole tribe showed up. Here's the tribe supercut. This is what all of her friends look like. But anyway, they all showed up, and they are ready to adventure. So everyone's going to jump through the gate at Gaia's navel, and they're going to end up back at the end of time. So it's basically split into the Iuka and the Laruba. And the Iuka are more strong because they used to face the Reptites directly, and the Laruba are a faster class. But as I was mentioning, because it's randomized, you'll get random stats and races, tribe affiliations on these characters every time you play. So this one that I'm showing you is just one iteration of what it could be. It could be 100 times a million. 100 times a million for sure. Okay. So I guess that one's over. Do this one. It's just sort of the same. It's the same general thing, but just a cooler version with the Elusive Panda artwork. This little shred of light is really bugging me. What if I just do this? Okay. Now we don't have to look at that tiny shred of light at the end of at the bottom of the screen. Oh, Elusive Panda, it's still there. Okay. I'm gonna stop being so crazy about this. Oh, you know what? I can do this. Dude, problem solved. Now it looks like an accent. Alright, I'm way off topic. Yes. These are your choices. So you can go into 700 or 1020. The party arrives at the end of time after bounding into Gaia's navel. Hey, this is pretty good. You can travel to any of those 4. I can probably name them all. This is Raikou, Ransu. That's of course Kino, Torque. I don't know. Ray, Ho. That's Leah. You see how I did like the old lady sprite for Leah? So Leah is now an old lady because she's Ayla's mother. That was never confirmed in Chrono Trigger, but we're just gonna, or Chrono Cross rather, but we're just gonna go in this story with the clean and simple that yes, Leah is Ayla's mom, and now Leah is an old lady. Here, it doesn't matter what their names are right now. And this background was by Ricardo Quirino. Oh, that one standing next to Nadia with the sunglasses is Bob. Okay, here we are. It's yet another version of this image. But this one I feel is much stronger because it has the people in it. Oh wow, I really did this one into the dirt. Here it is again. There are 4 time zones available, and then they list the 4. Only 3, oh, here we go. This brings it back to classic Chrono Trigger style. Only 3 people at a time can go in. And so you go through these different time zones, and I will explain. Build your party's strength for the challenge ahead. The vision of serpent awaits you. So at this point, you could skip prehistory, you could skip 700, 1020, you could go straight to 2300 and go straight to the singularity and face the vision serpent. And there's a lot of variations, but we're going to go with we're not going to do that. We're going to visit all of the time zones, and I'll explain them as we go. Okay, and then when you talk to Gasper about them, he says these things. Prehistory, you won't get far without a boat. And the Middle Ages, in the heart of Dalton's empire, nowhere is safe. Present. So this was the one that Nadia went back to earlier. The one with the Lavos spawn in the wall. Roving gangs of survivors create a tormented landscape of perpetual war. Only a small army can survive. Pretty hardcore, dude. And then the future. There's something happening there that I don't understand. There's no guarantee of a return trip. These were my first drafts, so we could make it sound, we could study Gasper's character and make it sound more like he would talk. And this reaffirms that. No going back. Both Melchior, that's such a hard name to say, Melchior and Gasper offer firm warnings about crossing into the future. There is no return from 2300 AD. So in prehistory and the Middle Ages and the present, that's where the player sort of grinds up for their trip to the future and face the Vision Serpent. Prepare to face the Vision Serpent. Only 3 party members at a time may travel to these time zones. Oh, that's Drake right there. He has a butterfly next to him. So at this point, you can take any party composition that you want, with one exception. Which we'll get to later, the themes of the Arbiter. But until the Frozen Flame is destroyed and or not destroyed, you can make that choice yourself. Until it is destroyed, if you opt to destroy it in the kind of like mid to late game, then it turns off Arbiter mode. However, until that time, here I have this little graphic to explain it. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to introduce us. I'm going to take away this. This looks terrible. And we will go to the first workstation. And here's my little notebook, because these are notes. Okay? So this explains about the Frozen Flame. The party can acquire the Frozen Flame by defeating Pico in the Darkness Beyond Time. Destroying the Frozen Flame changes the game condition to no Arbiter mode. Arbiters no longer required for party formation. Any collection of characters may form a playable party. So when I said mid to late game, I was way wrong. It's actually at the end of Storygate. Well, I was not wrong. I don't want to give it all away, but yes. There is a point. It looks like the Frozen Flame is Luca's hat right now. I'm wearing a hat. My hat is the Frozen Flame. Yeah. I like a frozen flame hat. I like a Okay. Let's move back to this. Sorry, guys, you're out. Excuse me. All right, let's continue. Ooh, dude, do I get to go to the chat? I think I figured out the chat. Hey. Hey, the chat disappeared. There it is. Hey, what's up, man? This is the first time the chat has been featured. Glad to have you. Okay, so we go back here and then what? Okay, this is just the official file name here is Marl B Baller. It's just a cool picture of the party. Yeah, there we go. It shows how the old image from the magazine looked, and then, you know, another interpretation of it. And sort of represents, so that's chapter 4 of the introductory Marl start. I think there's only 5 chapters. There's only 4 actually. And this up here indicates that Marl is the arbiter. Oh yeah, that's what I was trying to explain. You need 1 arbiter in your party until you, in every party of 3, until you, what's the word? Yeah, destroy the frozen flame, if you choose to. On some playthroughs, you might never switch out of arbiter mode, and that's fine. It's all about playstyle. So, there's a slim chance that if you start a new game, that Marl will spawn as a fire magic user. Oh, hold on, I want to go back and read the rest. When selecting new game. So imagine that, you know, in a game that is about certain randomized elements, there's a chance, okay, say for instance you start the game once and you game over pretty quickly. And so then the game logs that, right? It knows that you gamed over. So then you start again and you don't get very far and you game over. So maybe at that point it offers you a new condition where Marl spawns as a fire user, as a shout out to the old box art that happened. Fire Marl's offensive toolset provides a unique experience. It's especially useful in the early game. So it's sort of like a a difficulty adjuster for anyone. It doesn't always have to be like that. It could just be the random chance, but you know, there might be an additional chance that you'll have a fire Marl if you kind of don't get very far the first couple times. At any rate, let's continue. The lost daughter. Now that Marl can use katanas, she can equip the Steel Shade's Masamune. Berserk status is useful, but beware its corruptive influence. Alright, I kind of got ahead of myself there. I'm going to explain the Masamune. I'm sorry, I got yelled at once for saying it incorrectly. The Masamune. And this is more of the same. Explaining. There's a slim chance Marl will spawn as a fire magic user. Okay, this was going back to my point before. The game begins with absolutely no introductory scenes of exposition whatsoever. After selecting new game, you are thrown into the overworld just south of Guardia Castle. The only expository world building the player may have had before this point is when the game first booted up, prior to the title screen, which briefly explains the backstory and premise. The player learns everything else by interacting with NPCs and the world. Very few forced conversations. You can approach and talk, but you never have to. And so then we get the title screen for the... You get the key item of the pendant in this start scenario. This is another one. After Marl's intro chapter, the party's at the end of time. This is the old school version of this. No shortage of explanation on this part of the game, that's for sure. But we are about to head into I have prehistory and 700 AD are done. So we can look at those. This is so badass. This was another magazine photo. But Marl and Robo, this is for New Game Plus. So as I was mentioning, in the New Game Plus, there's different starting scenarios, which I think it's important to show those. Let's go to... Let's check this out. Here's our second workspace. And that was a mistake. Sorry. Oops. Oh man, I really messed that one up. Alright, here we go. Here are the new games you can do. Oh sweet, it looks like Marl is walking right on the fire there. Anyway, Nadia start, Surge start, Shala start, Kid and Gil start, and Ayla start. Why was I talking about that? Oh yeah, because those are your starting scenarios in New Game Plus. But if you select Nadia, then you do the same scenario you did in New Game, except for this, which says, you know, Marl and Robo retain their levels in tech. Equipment does not carry over, however. Equipment does not carry over. Because you can use these bad boys, seal equipment in magic chest or a blue chamber. It will be there on your next run. So lending itself to the nature of this game where you play it several times, or you know, you run through it. Okay, your average RPG takes many hours to complete. Chrono Trigger was relatively short. You know, 12 hours to 20 hours for a casual playthrough. So, you know, let's harness that. Let's really harness the replayability that the original Chrono Trigger guys were going for, and make it a game where you can get to an ending cinematic in anywhere from 10 minutes to an hour to 4 hours, and then the restart is built into it. So in this case, New Game Plus, you do not take your items with you. However, you can retrieve them by sealing them in these chests, which carry over to the next time you run through the game. Thusly, that way we could get some use out of these blue pyramid things that were never quite articulated in the other one. But oh, you know what? Actually, that would imply, because you would get items out of those, right? So that would imply in this case that in the original Chrono Trigger, someone had left those for us from the previous time they played it. That's kind of cool. Okay, Let's get rid of those bad boys and continue with these videos. Okay, with the zoom in. Selecting new game triggers the fall of Guardia cutscene or the courtroom start. If the player game overs with Marl, the chapter is replayed. Cool, and this gets into more of it. So this would be your party at the beginning. Princess Nadia escapes the attack on Guardia Castle. She and Chrono briefly team up before they are separated. So we saw that earlier. Hold on, let me get to my chat. This game is amazing. I've beaten it 100% like a million times. Even with all the problems of the DS added stuff, I still prefer... Yeah, the DS had some cool stuff in it. The extra dungeons. Who doesn't like extra content? The Lost Sanctum. Thanks for coming out, Kira Runte, Akyair, and Mint. Okay, so this would be chapter 2 of the introductory quest, and this is where you have Toma leading. So after Marl gets... Oh, so Marl cracks the time egg that Luca left in the basket at the end of time. And then she ends up in 700 AD. Now, why would that be? Why would that be? Well, that's all to be explained later, but it is one of the only times when a lot of these characters are converged on the same time. But anyway, she's in prison. She gets thrown in jail because the Mystic War is raging still, and they assume she's a mystic because of the way that she appeared from the time gate. So they throw her in jail, and Toma 3 leads her out of Guardia prison. He perishes while crossing Xenon Bridge. So he's a guest character, which I think I have a picture of here. Marl enters the forest alone. Oh, I froze it up again. It's definitely going to show the party. There we go. So this is a good opportunity to learn about guest character dynamics in the intro chapter as well. So you don't play as Toma, but he's there, and you know, he's got his automated functions. He serves a purpose, which is a strong attack and some limited potion healing. So the note in the basket said, "Find Robo." And so she's going to look for the shrine, Fiona's shrine. Deep in the endless forest, Marl finds Fiona's shrine. The tree, and then so Frog is there, and he's older now, and he's been guarding Robo, who exists as an out-of-dimension relic here. It's complicated, but the science is sound, trust me. So they head to Dorino. Once Nadia talks to Robo, Robo has a message for her, which is like, we need to get to Gaia's navel. So they set sail, but when Porian troops attack, Frog stays behind to give Marl and Robo time to escape. So this is the first real party of the game. Your first like traditional 3-person party. And should be totally nostalgia inducing. Okay, let's continue. This was a really long one, actually. All right, then we get to the final chapter where the dragons sleep. And so during this time period, El Nido would be how it was in Chrono Cross, but also the dragons are asleep. And the Records of Fate are there, and it's Marl and Robo going through El Nido, Middle Ages. Okay, and then the final chapter, before you can choose what you want to do. The Bound Watchman corners Marl and Robo in Gaia's navel. Ayla and her tribe appear to save them. After the battle, Ayla invites Marl and Robo to join the tribe. Everyone heads into the time gate, taking them to the end of time. I have really done this plot point to death tonight, but that's okay. That's okay. What? What's this doing here? Oh, sweet, right? Okay, this is what I wanted to mention also. Some characters now wield 2 weapons. You can have a dual-wield character. Hey, go back. Chrono uses a katana still, but old Chrono can use guns as well as a katana. And Marl can use a katana, in addition to crossbow. No one else really changed. Just Marl and old Chrono. And Guru Luca. Okay, we've seen all this. They get separated. Whenever you see the balloons, it's like we're revisiting something that we already talked about. So we've got that perspective. In this case, it was illustrating New Game Plus. You've got the perspective on it now. You're seeing it again as if you were hanging from balloons. Okay, nope, we're going to skip this one. Here's a supercut I did of all the of some cool artwork that I had collected over the years of, you know, doing this project. Okay, now we're getting into the pendant mechanics. So, as we saw up here on... I'm going to take a chance. I chanced. There we go. As you see here, you start the game with the pendant. Now, there was one thing that was mentioned that was really weird. This quote. The pendant, this is about the pendant that Kid had when Luca found her. The pendant would rewind time a little, sending her daughter clone into the safer point in the immediate past. So that was sort of to explain how the infant had survived by itself for that long, I guess. But this is a weird thing that they dropped. But I think that this needs to be a lot of my philosophy when making this project was about I'm trying not to add anything. The third act is not when you want to be adding things. You just want to be tying up loose ends and using things that have already been provided to kind of flesh them out in a way that hadn't been done yet. So we have this quote that was really, that has never gets used again in Chrono Trigger about the pendant. And so we're going to turn that into a game mechanic where, you know, similar to Final Fantasy VI, you can equip relics. In this game, you can equip, each character can equip one key item. So if you have a pendant, that's good enough for the whole party. But keeping the pendant charged is a great way to mitigate the difficulty of the break, which is the overworld, but also just to mitigate the difficulty in general. Pendant is a great early game item for safety. And why is that? You see over here the pendant charge. So if you have the pendant equipped, the pendant would be there. The charge would be there. Because watch this. Say you get like totally blasted by Lavos. Okay. This meter will appear if a pendant is equipped. So here you get totally wrecked by Lavos, and then you're like, nah, let me deplete some of my pendant and go back in time a second. So you see the pendant's getting depleted over here. So I think I even mentioned Braid, but yeah, the game Braid had that same mechanic. Equipping a pendant uses 1 item slot. It doesn't sound like a lot, but it is when you realize later on that you don't need a pendant if you equip other things, then you can have other benefits. So having the rewind time thing is up to you to take with you or not. There are 2 pendants. And so 1 pendant is good for the whole party. Oh yeah, this is it. Squeeze the shoulder button. And by the way, come on, the trigger, squeeze the trigger, squeeze the shoulder button on the controller. So it's implementing the trigger to reverse time on the controller. But anyway, you squeeze the shoulder button to seize the braids of time and rewind combat. I just wanted to make sure that everyone knows Braid was a game that the first one I know of that implemented the whole rewind time effect. There have been others. So now we're getting into, all right, this is perfect. Now we're getting into if you choose to go to 700. Wait, let's not do 700. Let's start with prehistory. Okay, I got to bring prehistory in. All right, so you're standing at the end of time with your party, and you're deciding where to go. And you start with the beginning. You go to prehistory. Oh, this one actually needs some work. It looks kind of janky because of the... I sort of messed up the coloring. But what this one is showing is it's showing this high-tech door in prehistory. And it says... Sorry, I apologize about the font. Finding the Neo-Epoch. There is an advanced technology lab that has no business being in prehistory. Only a fully charged pendant or the Masamune will open the door. The Neo-Epoch inside may work again if the anti-proton engine could be repaired. So that is for later stuff. It's really not a good intro into the prehistory thing because it's actually sort of the last thing that you would wrap up in prehistory. The main thing about prehistory is that there's not much to do except grind through powerful enemies and find Dreamstone. And talk to the New if you see him. Prehistory is a great place to level up before you take on the Vision Serpent at the first story gate, the Battle of Zeal. He might have a few screws loose, but this New is all that's left of Balthazar after Chrono Cross. That is also explained in the Dusk of Time movie, which starts with Did Luca die in the orphanage fire? I think I'm going to compile them yet again into a single movie, but they've been through many forms already. They were originally called What Could Chrono Break Be Like on the channel, and that one got the majority of the views over the years, and then I compiled it and added an intro screen, and then it's it didn't get seen as much, which is sort of irrelevant to why I'm telling the story. But anyway, this is going on a long time. The New can join your party as a powerful guest, however he will not leave prehistory. He is a slow, lumbering attacker with only one move, the headbutt. So prehistory is set up as a minimal story grind session, which several of the areas in the game are. They're just powerful. They're just there. You just go there to do combat and to level up. And prehistory is one of those. And you can recruit the New to come with you in certain circumstances, but he's a guest, so you don't control him, and he's just damage only, no other functions, and he won't leave prehistory. So it's another way to sort of mitigate the difficulty. Gaia's navel in prehistory is a brutal grind. Hey, I didn't get to read that. A brutal grind through the powerful ancestors of the monsters of Gaia's navel in 700. So you can actually go to Gaia's navel and level up in both zones. A vast dungeon filled with rocks, perfect for learning double and triple techs. So the black rock, the blue rock, all those rocks, they're just abundant in this game. But Dreamstone and those rocks are especially abundant in prehistory. So you can level up here. Collect Dreamstone and sell it in the future or forge powerful equipment. Dinosaur enemies retain their strength from Chrono Trigger as well as their weakness to lightning. Level up in prehistory. Learn tech. Build teams. Get Dreamstone. So the more that certain trios play together, the more their team synergy will develop. Okay, so the next couple movies are just the things that the new will say if you talk to him, and I'm not going to read those. I'll just let them you say for themselves. Hey, wait, I do want to go back to that last one. It's creepy. Society during the advent of the domes and the early years of Mother Brain's guidance was a marvelous time. Alas, even after centuries of forward progress, that place never matched the majesty and beauty of my homeland. Much of what we had when I was a boy was never to be recreated on this planet, no matter the era. So this is original Balthazar telling us how zeal was always the pinnacle. The height of zeal was the height of humanity. Even the domes and all that stuff that came later, even if it had been a utopia, it wasn't as advanced as zeal. At least that's Balthazar's opinion. Of course, he didn't live to see much beyond 2300 whatever when he left, so he never really would know. Another theme of this game is how Balthazar is not a know-it-all. Like, he knows a lot, but he's been wrong about some stuff, and he can be wrong about other stuff too. Imagine appearing in a peaceful 2300 as a man from an ancient, more evolved civilization. They didn't want to believe me, but they could not disprove my story or ignore the facts. My science was beyond theirs. So what else could they do? They sent me to the most remote part of the planet to work by myself. So when Balthazar showed up in 2300, he was probably so out of place, and so they sent him to Chronopolis to kind of, capitalize on his knowledge and just say, okay. It says to work by himself, but he did have a pretty large crew there, and there was a whole like community of people in Chronopolis. So just keep in mind this is also Balthazar coming through the new, so he's kind of like lost his mind by this point. You can argue whatever. The first magic wielders laid waste to those who could not defend themselves. The dirty secret of the magical floating kingdom was the creation of the earthbound slave caste and the bloodshed that made lifting the islands possible. I had to believe that we could evolve to a condition better than this, but nothing in my research or experience suggests otherwise. So you can see that at the end of Balthazar's days, when he transferred his consciousness into this new, He was quite the pessimist. He was in a bad headspace for sure. Okay. Qajar was inhabitable far before the other cities. That is where the raising was orchestrated. Hey, that is where the raising was orchestrated from. It was no mere task. It took an entire lifetime to raise that land. I might be mistaken. I might have meant to say Inhasa there. Maru Island, the very first island to go to the clouds, was way before the others. Perhaps the creepiest thing he says will only appear if Marl is in your party. The Dead Sea was a horrible mistake. Better not to try and reclaim what you've lost. I assure you there are many Chronos out there. Many of them are far from the man that you knew. So Marl's whole, narrative drive is to find out, what happened to Chrono and try to rescue him, and then Balthazar is just like, don't try it. You don't know what you're going to get. The Dead Sea was a horrible mistake. I wonder how Anu would talk. Better not to try and reclaim what you've lost. I assure you there are many Chronos out there. Many of them are far from the man you knew. So you can see that in prehistory they would have these underground areas too, to just diversify the landscape. So it's not all just the classic prehistory. They've got the underground stuff. And in this scenario, Ayla, Marl, and Robo found the new down in the volcanic areas. While trying to learn the new language, I found that even the new have trouble. What sort of language is so complicated even for its native speakers? What manner of creature are these? Further, what is this threat they are chattering about from the world next to ours? And that's sort of a reference of the new, going off about the Chrono Cross nonsense with the parallel worlds. They were onto it, and they were scared, and they are still scared because that is not fully the Chrono Cross part of it has been resolved. But the this new sprite is by Superfill64. I've got a couple of his things in here. He does a really good sprites about the 8-bit style. Wow, we still have more new talk. Did a lot of these. I bet this is one we already heard. Nope. I hoped a computer would be that should say computer would. It says computer world. Dang it. I hoped a computer would be immune to the corruptive influence of the frozen flame, but it was beyond our understanding. In this way, perhaps Countertime was not a failure. It was a great success for the one who fate truly answered to. I will definitely get into that later, but it's interesting to think about how, the people in Chronopolis, that's where we get all our information. They just say that the flame went out of control and caused, this rift where, the events of Chrono Cross. But in a way, it's like, how could anyone be sure that fate didn't intentionally do that because it served Lavos? Because she was powered by the frozen flame. So would fate be immune to the, Queen Zeal and Dalton and everyone else who gets corrupted by the frozen flame? Why would fate be any different? So maybe Countertime was not a failure, but a great success for the one who fate truly answered to. Okay, so while you're in prehistory, there's Dreamstone everywhere, so you can charge. The longer you hang out in prehistory, the more the ambient energy will slowly charge the pendant. Alright, and now we are moving into 700. So prehistory is just a grind to build experience. But now we will go into 700. This is on Gaia's navel in 700. Okay. So Frog is in the Middle Ages. A noble swordsman has lost the path. Find the Einlanzer and cleanse the curse, or don't. Take the curse blade. Okay, I want to explain this. Take the curse blade for your own and wield its power. So, kind of redefining the way that statuses work in this game. We're going to change it to Berserk is not easy to come by. I think it was just the Berserker helm or body armor in Chrono Trigger. So actually we're not changing it that much, but in this case, if you have a corrupted Masamune in your party, which they are very limited, there's only if you have a corrupted Masamune, then the character holding it is berserked, and their health is also depleted. But that can be used as a strategy. Recruit Frog from the Middle Ages. So you go back to the Endless Forest to revisit the shrine. Grind through huge monsters. They are truly the horrific result of nature gone unchecked. Track down the hooded fiend by following the bodies of the fallen Porian Guard. Frog's crusade must end. So when you get back to 700, some time has passed since you left it, and there's this... People keep talking about the hooded fiend who's just slaying everyone, and it's basically Frog has been corrupted by the Masamune, because in his defense of the squad, he just went on a tear, and then same thing that happened to Dalton. The Masamune absorbed too much blood, and he became corrupted by it as well. So when you go back to 700, you're dealing with a maniac frog, and that whole story idea came from this one picture by I can't quite read it, but his name's right there. Yeah, this one picture really inspired me. I just thought, man, that looks so badass. We have to incorporate this. So if the player brings in the Einlanzer from 1020 to 700 and cleanses the Masamune, Frog joins the party. Or, and this gets down to the crazy level of choice you have, you can defeat him and take the corrupted Masamune for yourself. And I'm not saying that would be an easy fight. In fact, it's probably... So that the story should go according to... there's ways you can weight certain things to make the story go the desired way for a creator to share it with a person. So in this case, if the fight with Frog is really massively hard, then sort of defeating him and taking it and experimenting with that is more of a new game plus option. On your first time through the game, there's a way to shape it so that you have most of the time a pretty samey experience, all first new players, and then after that you can do what you want, and there a lot of options open up. So that's what this is all about. They're just trying to find Frog and stop his bloody crusade. Frog knows not what he does. A noble swordsman has been corrupted. And then you can also go to in Poor. The reach of the Mammon machine is surprising. It must be truly powerful this time. So there is a Mammon machine that's fully activated and powered up in Poor during the Middle Ages. If you recover an anti-proton engine, if you become strong enough to reach Poor or Guardia Castle. And then you can take that anti-proton engine later on to the, you know, the prehistory door, and I'll get into that later. A jagged form gleams in the distant ocean. At its base, a massive city has sprung up in its shadow. This island settlement is dripping with Porian propaganda. It is a major trading hub, but the people are less than friendly. So this was all from the original Chrono Break trailer that inspired this project. And this is Simon S. Andersen showing his, this is his clip where he shows that really cool idea of having the Black Omen be a settlement. See there? It's like a little city with houses around it and stuff. So cool. And you can even get to Chronopolis. This is grain of salt territory. I got to think about it a little bit more. I'm not sure if that would mess up the story or what to get there at this point, but I think it's possible. Like I said, you can beat Dalton or Dalton's forces in all 3 of the time zones, except the 3 that are not prehistory. You can visit Dorino in 700. The local rebellion against Por has drawn the anger of the Empire. Dorino is under harsh occupation as punishment for their resistance. The ferry still runs to El Nido, but it's much more expensive. What to do in this brand new world? Attacking Dalton seems like the obvious choice. Unfortunately, 700 AD is the height of his empire. Enemies wield powerful weapons, the unholy mix of advanced technology and the rainbow shell. You can go to Giant's Claw, northeast of El Nido, far off the coast of Chorus, a flooded island. What did it say? A flooded island. Hey! A flooded island houses the ancient ruins of a Dragonian stronghold. Prehistoric monsters roam. A very strong party is needed. Same old story. It's like a grinding area. You can get good equipment and everything. Most of the places, they have story elements. Hold on, I should read this. Find a rusty stash of advanced weapons from the prehistoric wars. The guns may be too old to work, but there's a good supply of tech rocks and rare elements. Dalton has taken the rainbow shell, but tiny shards of it remain. So everything before the Vision Serpent is a just leveling up time. You can do it as much as you want, wherever you want. It's all about combat. You just have a few Colosseum type zones with some story elements in there, and it's just all about combat. So that's what we're going to be seeing, because the real the objective is to level the party up to power enough to defeat what seems to be kind of like a final boss of the game sort of encounter, which is the Vision Serpent, which I'll get to later. But yes, all of the time zones you can go into are grind heavy, and you can recruit the 3 characters: Frog, Surge, and Chrono. Also called the Massa Boys because all 3 of them are wielders of the Masamune. And you might be saying, hey, did Chrono ever wield the Masamune? And the truth is, dude, he was the father of the Masamune, because he stuck it in the Mammoth machine when it was the Ruby Knife. So the answer is yes. And Melkor even calls him the father of the Masamune. During this time period of El Nido's history, the Green Dragon sleeps. Wake him up from his nap to practice your skills. So a grindy boss. This actually has massive effects on the storylines, which I'll explain later. But if you choose this option in the introductory chapter, if you defeat him. This is a game mechanic, adaptive difficulty terrain. In Gaia's Navel, you can in all of the places really, you can always find harder enemies and better gear. If you have the time, take your party all the way to level 99. That would take a very long time, but it is possible. Oh, this is just a huge compilation of all the different ones. But I thought it was kind of neat. I don't want to delete it, but it's also not very practical anymore. I just scroll it up a little bit faster. That's Divine Dragon Falls there. The planet's dream is not over. Marl returns to the Middle Ages to discover 2 months have passed in the blink of an eye. In 700 AD, signs of Por's dominance of Xenon are everywhere. The royal family of Guardia is gone, and Dalton's regents rule the land. As I mentioned before, Dalton is not there. He's gone. In Por, Marl discovers many citizens driven faint by the corruptive power of the Mammon Machine. Slain Porian troops litter the landscape, and anti-mystic fervor is at a high. NPCs tell about a particular fiend who has decimated the Dragon King's forces. That's Dalton, the Dragon King, and the fiend is Frog. Fight your way into Por, only to find the Regent Cedric dead at the hand of the shrouded figure. Por demands recruits from Dorino and neighboring cities to replenish their forces. So there are some story elements going on. And Cedric is also a shout out to Crimson Echoes. That's their name. They use the name Cedric. Okay, so there's also an El Nido Viper's Manor, and you have to have a fully charged pendant to unlock the door, and you can only get that a certain way. Even when you start the game, it's not fully charged. It needs to be leveled up and charged. Where's Dalton? No matter where the player looks, they will not find the Divine Dragon, for he has long departed his era. He's long departed this era with the Epoch. Frog in the Dalton timeline. In this timeline, Frog has spent decades fighting in the Mystic War. He's over 100 years old by the time Marl finds him guarding Robo in Fiona's shrine. And I looked it up, and that could actually work because frogs have a really long lifespan, so it could work. It could work. But just another example of this, where the frog, he's one of the only characters where Luca and Frog are both aged, and Robo, I guess. At any rate, he's sort of the most different from the version that was in Chrono Trigger. He's way older. And he's got a sweet hoodie. Looks totally cool. Imagine all that experience. Oh, and also, he cannot use magic yet. And Nadia can, and because she's the Nadia from Chrono Trigger. But remember, this frog did not go on the Chrono Trigger adventure. So he never met Specchio. He does not have water magic yet. Frog spent decades fighting in the Mystic War. He's over 100 years old. That's 2 combined images. This one by Artie Charmy is the background, I think, and I could not find a credit for the foreground image of Frog. And this is just a variation on the one we just showed with this super badass frog pick by the Raging Spaniard. See how I totally made it say the Raging Spaniard like it was blood on the sword? Oh my god, so cool. Okay, we saw this one. And we saw this one. And we'll talk about this one later, but yeah, this is, you need to have a fully charged pendant to get into the underground ruins. And so that leads us to the final video on this session, which is this one. And this is from 1020 AD, which is the next time zone that we're going to work on and flesh out. So that's going to see the introduction of Chrono, Old Chrono, and Surge. But yeah, the first 1020 AD video, Ashes of the Dragon. People of the present worship a heroic emperor who united the world before perishing in the day of fire. Once again, as it explains in this video, where did Dalton go after Chrono Trigger? You learn all about how what he did sort of triggered... That looks terrible. What he did created a premature Day of Labos. So by the time you get to 1020, it's a devastated world. And they all worship their, they all tell legends about the divine dragon. But that is our subject for tomorrow and beyond, is 1020 AD. So I would like to say thank you very much for joining me tonight. We will get to all this tomorrow, but we will also be going here and here. Oops, that's still there. Don't need that anymore. And this is where we go when we want to do when we want to record some official audio so we can make some clips. We'll go to our speaking room. And that's right, my friends, we're also going to be playing Chrono Trigger. So we'll have a Let's Play vibe there where we capture some good scenes that we can repurpose to tell a future story. And with that, I just want to say thank you for joining us, and I will check you on the next broadcast.